You swore you'd never be like your father. Now you hear his words coming out of your mouth. You promised yourself you'd never become that controlling boss now. Your teen fears you the same way. Adorable how predictable this is. You despised people who lie. Now deception is your default. The thing you fought against your entire life. That's exactly what you became. Standing ovation for the most predictable outcome in human psychology. Me being Zeus here from Olympus. I've watched countless generations fight their shadows only to become them. And one thing never gets old. The harder you run from something, the faster you become it. This is the identity paradox. Not because you're weak, because you never understood how identity forms. You thought avoiding something meant you'd never become it. Cute. You were programming yourself to become exactly that. In the next few minutes, I'll show you why you become what you hate, how fighting something makes it stronger, and the one thing you need to do to actually break the cycle. Comment which trait you swore you'd never have, but now recognize in yourself. Watching these confessions never stops being predictable. Here's the pattern in millions of homes. Young man grows up with an angry father, yelling, controlling. The kid thinks I'll never be like him. I'll be different. Adorable how certain he is. Fast forward 20 years. He's got his own kids, stressed about money, exhausted. His kid leaves toys on the floor. What comes out? The exact same words his father used, same tone, same rage. He catches himself for a split second. Oh God, I sound just like him. But it's too late. His kid just learned what he learned. That fathers yell when stressed. Pattern transmitted. Standing ovation. Here's what makes this adorable. He spent 30 years trying to not be his father, 3 decades of conscious effort, and still became exactly what he hated. How? Because everything you fight against you give power to. Every time you say, I'll never be like that, you reprogramming your subconscious to study that behavior, to understand it, to internalize it. The son obsessing over not being his angry father is constantly thinking about anger, analyzing anger, defining himself by anger. Anger becomes central to his identity, even though he thinks he's rejecting it. Fascinating watching humans strengthen what they oppose. Your identity isn't formed by what you consciously choose. It's formed by what you obsessively focus on, what you constantly define yourself against. Adorable how backwards you have this. When you say I'm not like my father, your brain hears father. When you say I'll never be controlling, your brain hears controlling. The word not doesn't register. Your subconscious filters it out. This is why affirmations about avoiding something never work. I won't be lazy programs lazy. I won't be poor programs poor. You're literally programming the exact outcome you're trying to avoid. Standing ovation for self-sabotage. Here's the mechanism. Your brain learns through repetition and focus. Every time you think about what you don't want to become, you're rehearsing that identity, studying it. Your brain doesn't distinguish between study and practice. You think you're guarding against your father's anger by monitoring yourself constantly. What you're actually doing is keeping anger at the center of your awareness. And what you focus on grows. Always. Cute how you thought you'd be different. Comment the pattern you're most afraid of inheriting. Just the pattern. I already know most of you have been running from something. The ones who won't comment are still pretending they're different. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the parts you reject and deny. He understood something most never figure out. Whatever you reject doesn't disappear. It goes underground, grows in the dark, gains power through denial. When you say I'm nothing like my father, you're creating a shadow, stuffing those traits into your unconscious, thinking if you don't acknowledge them, they can't affect you. Adorable how backwards this is. Those rejected traits don't weaken through denial. They strengthen, become autonomous, start operating without your control, which means they control you more completely than if you'd acknowledge them. Standing ovation for making it worse. Real example. Guy terrified of being controlling like his father, monitors himself obsessively, lets people walk all over him, thinks he avoided the pattern. Cute. Then his girlfriend comes home late. He loses it completely, demands to know where she was, wants to check her phone, controlling behavior worse than his father ever showed. Where did this come from? From the shadow. From years of denying those impulses, pushing them down, they were building pressure. When the dam broke, the flood was catastrophic. If he'd acknowledged them, he could have managed them. But denial made them stronger. The shadow always wins. Here's another version. The person who defines themselves by rebellion. Child of religious parents becomes militant atheist. Person raised poor becomes obsessed with wealth. Victim of control becomes hyper-independent. They think they're free, adorable. But watch. The atheist is just as obsessed with religion as the believer. Talks about it constantly. Religion still controls their life, they just flip the sign. The person obsessed with wealth, because they grew up poor, is still controlled by poverty. Every decision filtered through not being poor. Money becomes as much of a prison. Same cage, different bars. This is the rebellion trap. You think you're free because you chose the opposite. But opposite is just another form of attachment. True freedom isn't choosing the opposite. It's becoming independent of the entire dynamic. Me being Zeus, I've watched revolutionaries become tyrants, victims become abusers, the oppressed become oppressors. Every generation, people fight something so hard they become it, and they never see it because they're convinced opposition makes them different. Standing ovation for missing the point. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. As long as you're defining yourself against something, you're still chained to it. Adorable watching people celebrate their new prison. When your identity is built on not being something, you live in constant vigilance, monitoring yourself constantly. It's exhausting on a level you don't recognize. You can never relax because existing requires allowing yourself to have all traits, including rejected ones. So you're in permanent performance mode, proving you're not that thing. It's a full-time job that pays nothing. This creates massive stress and fragmentation. You're splitting yourself, the conscious you being good, the unconscious you containing rejected traits, growing stronger, and the unconscious always wins. Cute how you think willpower can compete. But here's what really destroys you. You lose all authenticity when half your energy is spent not being something. You have zero left to discover what you actually are. Your identity becomes reactive, defined by opposition, not genuine self-knowledge. I see this constantly, and it is adorable. People who spend so much time making sure they re-not their parents that they never figured out who. They are 40 years old, successful, completely hollow, because their personality is a defensive structure, not an authentic expression. And the cruelest part, despite decades of vigilance, they still become what they fought against. The pattern emerges anyway, because defining yourself against something guarantees you'll become it. Standing ovation for wasting your life, fighting a battle that strengthened the enemy. If you're still watching, you discovered why your rebellion made you a prisoner. Subscribe for truth about psychological traps. Most will close this and go back to fighting shadows. You're still here, which means you might be brave enough to stop fighting. Here is how you break the cycle, and this will violate everything you believe. Adorable how resistant you'll be to this. You have to acknowledge you already are what you hate, not fully, but the capacity is there. Denial won't kill it, but acknowledgement can manage it. Your father's anger? It's in you. You inherited his temperament, his nervous system. The question isn't whether you have it. You do. The question is what you do with it. Deny it and let it control you unconsciously, or acknowledge it and manage it consciously. This is integration, taking rejected parts, bringing them into awareness, saying, yes, I have controlling tendencies. Yes, I have my father's temper. Not as defeat, but as power. You can only control what you acknowledge. Fascinating how simple this is, and how few people actually do it. When you stop saying, I'm nothing like my father, and start saying, I have some of his traits, I'm aware of them. I choose how to express them. Everything changes. The shadow can't ambush you. Those traits are under conscious management. The paradox. The moment you stop fighting being like your father, the moment you acknowledge similarities, The S when you become free to be different. As long as you in denial, you controlled by what you deny. Acceptance creates space for choice. Authentic identity isn't built through opposition. It's built through exploration. Instead of spending energy on what you won't be, discover what you actually are. Instead of I won't be angry like my father, try I'm learning to understand and manage my anger. Instead of I'll never be controlling, try I notice controlling impulses and choose partnership. See the difference? One is denial, the other is acknowledgement and choice. One gives power to shadow, the other integrates it. But most of you will choose denial because it feels more righteous, adorable. Here's what this looks like. You notice your father's anger in yourself. Instead of horror, you think, interesting. I inherited this. What do I do with it? Maybe meditation, maybe exercise, maybe communicate before boiling point. You're working with it, not pretending it doesn't exist. This is authentic power, not fake power of denial, real power of integration. You're not at war with yourself. You're managing yourself. All parts, including ones you'd prefer, weren't there. And here is what happens. You stop becoming what you hate because you no longer defined by hate. You redefined by conscious choice. You might have your father as temper, but you choosing different actions, and that choice creates genuinely different identity. This pattern creates generational cycles. Your grandfather passed trauma to your father to you. You'll pass it to your kids, unless you break it now, and you can't break what you deny. Every generation thinks they're different. Father who is beaten swears he'll never hit his kids. He doesn't. But he's emotionally distant because he's so focused on not being physically abusive. He forgot connection. Different symptom, same wound. Mother who is controlled becomes permissive, thinks she's breaking the cycle by giving total freedom, but she is still controlled by the dynamic, just chose opposite. Her kids grow up chaotic. They probably become rigid with their own kids' pendulum swings. Watching this repeat across generations never gets old. This is how family patterns persist across centuries, not through repetition, but through opposition. Each generation rebels, thinks they're different, but they're flipping the same coin until someone acknowledges, yes, I contain this pattern. Now, I'll consciously transform it. That person breaks the cycle, not by fighting, not by denying, but by integrating, by saying, I see you. I understand where you came from. I acknowledge you exist, and I choose consciously how to express you. That's when generational trauma ends. This is your responsibility. Not to be perfect, not to be opposite of your parents, but to be conscious, acknowledge what you inherited, manage it deliberately, stop passing unconscious patterns to the next generation. You came here wanting me to tell you how to avoid becoming what you hate. I won't, because avoidance created the problem. The solution isn't fighting harder. It's surrendering to what is, acknowledging you contain what you fear. Keep watching, because this plays out millions of times daily. People spend lives running from shadows, convinced they read different. Then one day they see exactly what they tried to escape in the mirror, and recognition either breaks them or wakes them up. But it doesn't have to break you. You can choose integration now, before the shadow takes control, before you become what you swore you'd never be. The choice requires something most and give. Radical honesty about who you actually are. Not who you wish you were, not who you're performing, who you actually are right now, including the parts you hate. Radical honesty is the only thing that creates radical change. Most will ignore this, go back to fighting shadows, thinking you're the exception. Few will have courage to look at your reflection and say, yes, I see you, I accept you, now let's work together. Those few break free, not through opposition but integration, not through denial but acceptance. And watching someone actually break a generational cycle never gets old. Gives me something close to hope for your species. Comment which generation you're breaking the cycle for. Yourself, your kids, your future. Just that. Next time I reveal why your greatest strength becomes your greatest weakness, and how success plants seeds of failure. See you then, if you're brave enough to keep facing uncomfortable truth.